Yeah, we're hanging out all the time now.
Yeah, we're just hanging out. It's Kate and Katie
Kate and Katie
Silcox.
hour.
Kate and Katie hour. I got a bunch of Katies in my life. I got Kate O'Donnell too. She comes on the show a lot.
Mm.
Um, for for those who don't know Katie Silcox, she is the ShaktiSchool.com, and you can check her all out there. She's the author of Healthy, Happy, Sexy Ayurvedic Wisdom. So we don't talk as much about the sexy stuff over here, so this will be a good chance for people to
we
tap
are
into the sexy.
we're just coming
Sexy.
from talking about sexy, so I'm ready to go on that
You're
topic.
okay. Sexy Ayurvedic Wisdom for the Modern Woman. Maybe we'll title this episode under that. So let's talk a little bit just about um, women, Ayurveda, Tantra, and yoga. Just tee it up that way, because this is sort of where this is where your domain is. This is where you've made an imprint in the Ayurvedic community, and I'd love to hear just what brought you down more into this venue and where you're at in this venue.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I came to the tantric aspect through just the more traditional gateways of yoga. I studied with the Mohans in India, and then I studied for a while with Rod Stryker, who's a tantra teacher, and so that really got me interested in this whole idea of this everyday fabric of life being a possible place for one to awaken and come into the depths of who they really are. And it just keeps growing and growing and growing as I become more and more and more normal and satisfied with being a normal person living on the planet. I think I came to yoga kind of unknowingly wanting to become enlightened. And now I no longer believe in that. And I just believe in being what my friend Jeff Brown calls enheartened. And a sign of, if there was an enlightenment, just being a better sense of humor and like just being more on this planet and more in love with this life, with all of its terrible things and beautiful things. And that's where my heart sits right now, Kate. And what I'll say is that the more tantric you become, it's like the less you really do have any kind of dogma and any kind of system. And I'm no longer studying in any kind of formal guru system, which is really beautiful and terrifying all at once. And so yeah, that's where I am. I don't know what your listeners may think of as Tantra.
Yeah, maybe we should throw down some definitions here. We're like just throwing a bunch of words around. Yeah, let's throw some definitions down.
Well, I mean, firstly, I think your listeners are a really educated, smart group of people that may have gotten the notice, but just in case they didn't, there's this misconception in the wider body of the United States and the West that Tantra is about a mind-blowing sex and incredible multiple orgasms, which having gone through a very traditional male tantric lineage, what I'll say is there's a lot of poo-pooing of that. And indeed, this isn't the traditional tantra from India, but now that I'm kind of branching out and understanding more of the feminist roots of spiritual practice, that certainly is a part of it and something to be embraced. But tantra literally means a tool for ton, which is to be expanded. And so it's really any methodology. I mean, you're certainly a tantric, your listeners are tantric, your guests are all tantric, because we're all looking for methodologies, techniques, modalities that enable us to expand, not into like airy fairiness, but into the depths of who we actually are, and to expand our vision of what's actually real and true, and to really be able to be intimate and make love to reality as it is unfolding in this moment right now, which is the whole gig, of course. So that's a really broad definition. We're all tantrics at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's good to kind of clear up some of the like sort of the historical biases and whatnot of like when we think a word means something, because it's a piece of a concept rather than the larger concept. So as we look at this part of embodied living, enheartened living, this like waking up to embodiment and enheartenment, if you will, it seems like there's a lot more going on right now in I would even say like in mainstream culture where people are much more aware of, okay, I need some self-care. Like I need to take time for myself. And yet at the same time, like we're in a bit of a maelstrom in many parts of the world, you know, just what's happening politically. There's also just the technology piece of our technology is becoming increasingly addictive and sticky and is designed to do that, where it's actually pulling us against that desire of being more in our own selves. So I guess, what is your sense in terms of like these teachings of Tantra and embodiment and heartment and as they're arising like right now?
I mean, I think what's happening is that we're being asked to get broad and big and wide, and that's what Tantra means. And so while we're becoming all addicted to our technology, you know, maybe that's not a great thing, but I don't anticipate you or I like turning it off and going back only into the woods. And yet at the same time as we're being asked to really step into this broadening of our intellectual body and our thinking being, we're also being asked to deeply embody and to sense is the word I would use to open up this proprioceptive capacity and this ability to like get out of this over bloated mental body, which all of us are addicted to, and to step into this atrophied aspect of ourself, which is nonverbal and is feeling and sensate and so subtle. Like the animal embodied being is so subtle and so wise. I mean, it is the goddess herself. It is that pranamaya kosha that has the capacity to sense things and make decisions that are completely unrelated to the intellect. And that is a very humbling place to sit and can sometimes be a very scary place to sit. And so I think that because of our technology and our political and cultural malaise, we are being asked to step backwards a little bit into that animal aspect of ourselves so as to heal this over bloated addiction to the mental body, which I mean, I have as much as anybody. I'm a total thinker and worrier and projector into the future. And I think I just also want to say, I can't speak for Kate, but for myself, like those of us who are on this leading edge or cutting edge of these modalities and really, I think you called it like a innovation junkie, or I can't remember your term. I love.
Sounds right.
We are the ones who need it the most in the moment. And that's what I feel like my dharma is. It's like I'm being called into this really painful at times place to step into that next iteration of what it even means to be a human being.
Oh yeah, totally. No, I want to speak to that because to me that's so much of like when you're talking about Tantra of this, you know, this tool to expand. And if we go back to the word svatantriya of like this complete, like yoga is like this complete freedom to become and to innovate, is that's often what I find. I'm like, oh, there's something, like now I have an almost 12-year-old. I'm like, there's something just really doesn't work for my family with the school schedule. So we keep doing whatever we want to do. So it's very tantric driven, like very desire driven of like, how is our desire intelligent in itself? And how are we modeling for, not for everybody, but for other families, how to like actually live a life attuned and aligned to the inner intelligence of the family rather than to culture or what the school system's doing or the school schedule's doing or all that stuff. And it's rebellious, you know? I mean, that's really what it looks like to everyone is like, why don't you fit in the mold? And usually what happens there too is like there's a deep dive into the deeper values, right? So what my family values is different than what a lot of other people in the, you know, in the current structure value. So we value a certain amount of time together and a certain amount of unstructured exploratory time together than other people do, or at least we've articulated that value to know that's what we value, to know how to go after that value and make it into our unconventional life. And it's not for nothing, right? Like these ways that we whatever it is with lifestyle design, the ways I think those of us that are very much innovative with lifestyle design on our own terms is where, you know, so you turn good into better and better into even better and even better into even better, and it starts to look even more rebellious and even more counterculture, but it also serves as a way of guiding other people more into their own intuitive wisdom, or like you were saying, back into their pranamaya kosha. So this sensory fabric that we all have of like where is alignment and where is desire, and where's your inner wisdom goddess body pointing you to go next, and where is it also pointing you away from?
Well, when you're living in an insane culture, of course the ones who are attempting to go back to natural law look like the weirdos. And it makes me think of one of my favorite definitions of the word yogini is she who is on the outskirts of society. And that doesn't mean she doesn't live in society. It doesn't mean she doesn't love society and be a part of it. It means outskirts in her mental, emotional, sensate reality. We are the ones on that border that are saying no to the download that we've been, inheriting for so long. But I mean, and this may be another topic for another day, but like there is a distinction between yoga, traditional yoga, and Tantra. And so in the best of cases, yoga is the definition that you gave, which is this thing that enables me to enter into more innovation and more freedom. But in the worst of cases, in my opinion, it can also be yet another form of dogma and rules. And Ayurveda can be the same, and so we have to really watch when we're dealing with any kind of wisdom tradition, be it Ayurveda, yoga, Taoism, Christianity, any kind of science, right? Tantrics were the anti-establishment. They were very much on the outskirts. And so when you talk about your family, Kate, I'm just like, yeah, you're a tantric, and in a way signaling the rest of the tribe, hey, like this is what Mother Nature might, this is a way that you actually might be happier at the end of the day.
Yeah. Find a more meaningful life, have a bigger, better, whatever that means, impact or experience. So, I mean, let's talk a little bit about this, because I think a lot of us who were trained in a more masculine Ayurvedic system where there was, or yogic system where it was like a lot about rules and a lot about structure, that was more or less, just had a lot of residue of patriarchy without an awareness of that residue, which was a little tricky to navigate for those of us back in the 90s or 80s or 70s or 60s or for the last few hundred years, is like realizing separating culture from wisdom, right? Where we take, right? Because it's tricky. Once you realize like, oh, this culture is entrenched in, this wisdom is entrenched in this culture, what does the wisdom look like, a standalone without culture, which is really tricky to do, because then we're actually imposing our modern culture on that, or feminist culture, or whatever it is, hippie lifestyle culture. So let's talk a little bit about our journeys with this, and your journey with like really finding the more feminine path of Ayurveda in a more, while maybe being taught in a more patriarchal way.
Yeah, and I mean, we have to be careful with that, because like you said, like it's a tricky situation. But I think what really blew my mind was reading Janet Achtenberg's Woman as Healer. And I began to read the history of women as doctors and nurses and medicine women in my particular lineage, which is a Northern European Scotch-Irish lineage. And when I learned about what happened to my tradition, it really opened my eyes to the way that women have been the carriers of the medicine traditions in almost all societies since the beginning of time. And so I began to refer to that as my lineage and as my teacher. And so when I refer to masculine form and feminine form, I love them both, and it's the yin and the yang. And the masculine form says we need rules, we need structure. And the feminine form says, well, yes, and we need magic and intuition, and we need, there's a beautiful line in a tantric text that I translate as, Shakti needs structure to flow through, but she doesn't like to be locked in a box. And if you do that, she will explode. Yeah. And I think that's what we're seeing with women on the planet. Like, this structure is no longer working for us, and we're exploding. And so now I very much don't want to live in a state of chaos and anger and explosion. And so now how can we recreate this new structure that integrates the masculine and the feminine inside of our own selves and in our society in this balanced way? And I think in the Ayurvedic and yogic context, it's very much about how do we deeply honor the laws and rules and beauty of the structure, but we don't lose that important thing that is emotion and magic and personal relationship with one to another. That's what, if you're an Ayurvedic health consultant or coach, that's what's going to impact your client more than anything else, is her feeling your heart of compassion and that exchange of prana between the two hearts. And that's what I'm interested in way more than what's my Vikruti and like what herb will correct this imbalance.
Yeah.
Because
yeah, I mean, it's like losing the, it's like the rules and all that, we're just kind of pointing towards the experience, right? But not to lose the experience for the rules. And it's, to me, it's such an important thing, I think, especially for those who are studying Ayurveda or are practicing, to kind of keep coming back to that of like what, with any sort of rule or guideline, and I wrote a book about rules, essentially a book about like the habits. But if we back up and say like, what's the underlying, like what experience is it pointing to? Like, can I tap into that experience of like, oh, this is experience of aligned flow, right? Then we're back in that Shakti of like, oh, okay, then it's like the awareness of what helps us with aligned flow. That's the aim, and anything not in service of that can just fall away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. That's a beautiful summary for me too, because I wrote a book about rules and now I'm like, man, I can't imagine living up to everything that's written in this book that I wrote.
Yeah. Well, and there are access points too of like, there's certain things that what I find so much with habits and keystones is like finding the things that are naturally easiest for us to do that become pillars of our life and being fairly non-negotiable with those. And then other things can glom on to those good habits, to those little Shakti pots, right? Those little pots of Shakti where are already aligned in our life that help build our deeper energy. Let's talk a little bit about the whole depletion cycle, because I know you have a personal experience with a deeper level of depletion and that fight and flight and freeze cycle and rebuilding of a nervous system, rebuilding of immune system. And this is so much of a cultural issue at this point, particularly for women, not exclusively. But it's something that I sense like we're in training the next generation in. And so it's like really up for people. And I'd love to hear a little bit about how you navigated, like what you see as like how you got in there and then how you got out of there.
Yeah, first I want to say that I feel like there's a lot of shame in women around getting depleted and feeling like you've done something wrong. And I certainly had not. I was living very much an Ayurvedic lifestyle. I was doing yoga every day, meditating every day, taking care of myself, trying to go to bed early. I was doing all the things right.
Yeah.
And I somehow still became very depleted, and it's still something that I work with every single day. And I think what it led me to as what the thing I call God is taking care of me and leading me to what I need to know. And then that's the thing that I need to share with people. And what I found was a lot of the yoga that I had been doing was by nature the traditional forms designed to collapse the central nervous system. I think a lot of people are doing a lot of yoga techniques without knowing the biophysiology of what's actually occurring in the body. So that led me, and this is like a 40-hour conversation, but that led me to some very smart people that helped me understand how to get my structure, the bones, which earth and water, right? The essence of my being, the earth and water, out of unconscious states of fight or flight, which if we don't know that we have them, then even things that are good for us like yoga and meditation can be reinforcing. And so I was doing lots of yoga nidra and lots of meditation, and my nervous system was getting more and more frozen. Because if you think about it, meditation and yoga nidra are frozen states if you're unaware, or if you've got a freezy state to begin with.
Right. Which a lot of people aren't even going to know they have, right? No. It's like not in the level of conscious, it's at the level of subconscious.
Those of us that are in a freezy state as a more of a pattern are attracted to practices that take us into deeper states of freeze. Just like we know from Ayurveda, our imbalance drives us to more imbalance. So the short story is I began to work with really brilliant nervous system experts, and I began to study the animal body and what the animal body does when it's in fight or flight. And I know we have to kind of wrap up soon, but Kate, I just want to say this to your listeners. An animal, when it's in fight or flight, draws its shoulder blades together and down on the back. It tucks its tailbone and it draws its belly in. And in fight, it puffs its chest up and it breathes very deeply. This is not a parasympathetic nervous system state. And yet, these are the very cues that many of us are receiving in a modern day pop yoga flow class.
Right.
So
Totally.
This was my big Oprah aha. And so then I dedicated the next 3 years of my life, and still am, to learning the biophysiology of how we can come out of those states and enter into a harmonious relationship to both our sympathetic and parasympathetic. And I'm very passionate about it. And yeah, if anyone out there there are a lot of people who know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, God bless you. I hope you never have to. But if you're in some of these traumatized states, this is the stuff.
Yeah. I mean, and I think a lot of us are following this path in different ways. Like for me, I really woke up to natural movement and functional movement and rewilding and cold plunging, like in a lot of these ways of just like, what is wild? Like what is natural? And I was in a workshop with Donna Farhi not too long ago, and she teaches this, basically like infant-based movement, like how do you simply just recover the spanda? How do you recover oraling and analing? Like just the ability of moving from the viscera, right? Moving from your digestive viscera.
I love this. Yeah, so we're tracking the same stuff.
Yeah. It's huge. I mean, and this is it, right? It's like nature over culture. We're needing to, if anyone's in fight or flight, that's culture over nature, right? And I've got to reverse it to like nature, like recovering the.
Yeah. And you don't have to have had something traumatizing happen to you. That's the big takeaway.
Right.
This is about trauma, capital T. This is about not being outside in the sunshine and moonshine all night and being in front of screens. Like this is doing something to our nervous system that we're kind of calling fight, flight, freeze, not because we were in a war or something, but because we're not living a wild life. Yeah. The answer to all the questions, I think at the end of the day, like if I could have one thing that I could summarize to the listeners, is the more you're just outside all the time, the more all this stuff clears up.
Yeah. And it's not even like, you don't have to go running either. Like you can, like I lie on the ground a lot. My daughter's like, you're lying on the ground again. I'm like, join me.
Yes.
Come down. Fly on our bellies for a minute. Awesome, everyone. This has been Katie Silcox, the Shakti School. So fun to connect and talk with you about, just the whole deal behind our deeper awareness and deeper energy and ability to be enheartened.
Always great to talk to you, Mama. See ya.
Okay, catch you later.
Yeah.